Hello, this is Matt Hesser with Dimensional Nomad Games, and welcome to Magic Adventures in Friday Night Magic Commander, Episode 4. Today we'll be talking about the games that took place at the Xeus and Apollos local game store in Pocatello, Idaho, that took place on August 4th, 2017. There were a good number of us this week, not quite as many as last week. Last week we had 20, this week we only had 18. Um, but it was still a lot of fun, still more than our usual 12 to 15 players, so it's always nice. Um, what I thought was interesting was that we had three the Scarab God commanders, so that's always fun to see mirror matches and things like that. So let's go ahead and get into. We'll talk about what commanders were there, what those commanders do, and then we'll go ahead and get into the games. All right, so as I said, we had 18 different players there. Three of them were playing the same commander, which is the Scarab God. We'll get into him in a moment, but I'll just go down my list of the different commanders there and what those cards do. So, first commander is Kali of the Vast. She is a white, black, and red for a 2/2 legendary human cleric with flying, and whenever Kali of the Vast attacks an opponent, you may put an angel, demon, or dragon creature card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking that opponent. So generally, Kali of the Vast decks are played to, they have big casting cost, demons, angels, dragons, and they throw them out in the field and attack. There's a couple of different strategies out there, so usually you do things like Rune Scar Demon because it lets you tutor for another card, and then you can get another trigger. And what you'll see is they'll play a lot of two-drop mana rocks like Felwar Stone or Signet so that they can turn 3 Kalia, get her out faster. Because the entire deck generally is built around Kalia. All right, then we have Prosh, Sky Raider of Kerr. It's 3 black, red, green for a 5/5 legendary dragon with flying, and when you cast Prosh, Sky Raider of Kerr, put X01 red kobold creature tokens named Kobolds of the Kerr Keep onto the battlefield where X is the amount of mana spent to cast Prosh, and sacrifice another creature. Prosh gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Now, the reason it says the amount of mana rather than just a number is that you can, when you cast Prosh with the commander tax, that includes the amount of mana you've done. So the first time you get 6, then 8, then 10, 12, and so on. So some of the decks are all about recasting the commander and things like that. Usually token strategies, things like Perforos and things that trigger on tokens entering the battlefield and things like that. Or another one is Prosh is a 5/5 flying, so if you give it +1, you know, a little bit double strike. So you get those 6 tokens. So you've sacrificed all 6, it turns them into an 11/5. And then with double strike, it one shots a player. So that's something to keep in mind when playing Prosh. And then we have Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight. It's 4 red, white, white for a 5/5 legendary angel with flying and first strike. And if a source would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, that source deals double that damage to that player or permanent instead. And if a source would deal damage to you or a permanent you control, prevent half that damage rounded up. Gisela, there's a couple of ways to build Gisela. Usually you want to ramp out and get her out as fast as possible. Some people do a punishment type with things like mana barbs. Whenever a land is tapped, it deals 1 damage to its controller. When Gisela's out, because it reduces the damage by half rounded up, if you would take 1, you take 0 instead. And then your opponents, of course, all take 2. So that's always an interesting build. Otherwise, just making her buffed is also nice because she's already a 5/5. So by herself, she hits an opponent, she hits for 10. So if you give her double strike and +1, just like Prosh, she'll one-shot an opponent. All right, so next commander we have is Thraxamundar. He is 4 blue, black, red for a 6/6 legendary zombie assassin with haste. And when Thraxamundar attacks, defending player sacrifices a creature. And whenever a player sacrifices a creature, you put a +1/+1 counter on Thraxamundar. So it's nice is that it immediately becomes a 7/7 if they have at least one creature blocking on their field. So it's already a 3-turn clock immediately. Usually what happens is people build in a lot more sacker mechanics, Butcher of Malakir, Grave Pack, things like that, and they play things that their own creatures sacrifice to buff him, causing your opponents to sacrifice creatures, and things like that. And then, of course, there's the Scarab God. Like I said, we had 3 people playing the Scarab God. It is 3 and blue-black for a 5/5 legendary god. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life, and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. And then for 2 blue-black, exile target creature from a graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of it, except that it's a 4/4 black zombie. And then when the Scarab God dies, return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So it doesn't have indestructible like the previous gods, but it does have a pseudo indestructible in that it returns back to the commander's to the player's hand. So it's nice that it only costs you 5 to replay it. The downside is that you then have to replay it. So, but it's a lot harder to remove because destroy effects just put it back into its owner's hand. There's a couple of different ways to play it. I've seen it played mill. I've seen it played zombie tribal. Um, I've designed my own. I haven't built it yet. I'm still trying to decide if I want to go more mill or zombie tribal. There's a couple different pros and cons for each side. But I believe that all 3 of them were actually running different builds. So it's nice to see diversity, which is what I love about Commander, even with the same commander. All right, then we had Hapatra, Vizier of Poisons. For a black and a green, you get a 2/2 legendary human cleric that says, when Hapatra, Vizier of Poisons deals combat damage to a player, you may put a neg1/neg1 counter on target creature. And whenever you put a 1 or more neg1/neg1 counters on a creature, create a 1/1 green snake creature token with Death Touch. So obviously you're going to see a lot of neg1/neg1 counters, Wither, Infect, things like that with Hapatra. All right, then we have Alicia, who smiles at death. For 2 and a red, you get a 3/2 legendary human warrior with first strike. And whenever Alicia, who smiles at death, attacks, you may pay a combination hybrid of white, black. If you do, return target creature card with power 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. There's a lot of different builds with this one. It's a graveyard manipulation that gives you white, black, and red, so it's a lot of fun cards. Mentor of the Meek is really strong with this. A lot of other fun builds. All right, then we have Malimo, Morrow Sorcerer. 4 green, green, green for a star legendary elemental with trample, and Malimo Morrow Sorcerer's power and toughness are equal to the number of number of lands you control. So by the time you play him, he's for 7, so he should be a 7/7. Usually it's built like a landfall deck and things like that. I'm actually not sure. I never got to play this guy, so I wasn't quite sure what he built. I think next week I'm going to talk to everybody and find out what their decks are like, what their themes are like, and so we have a better idea of how everything's built. All right. Then we have Captain Sisay, which was my commander. For 2 green and white, you get a 2/2 legendary human soldier with tap, search your library for a legendary card, reveal that card, and put it into your hand. Then shuffle your library. Now with mine, I've done the the eclectic decks video, so you can go ahead and check that on the YouTube page. There should also be um, the audio file, so the podcast version, I think. It was the first eclectic deck, so I don't know if it actually made it into that. But there should be an iTunes link. If not, I eventually plan to revisit it. I've updated it a lot since the original. But anyway, mine's actually Tribal Legend, rather than what you see is a lot of mana dorks, like, Llanowar Elves, other elves, and stuff like that, and Intel Eldrazi and things like that. But mine's actually Tribal Legend. I run a lot of legendary cards in the deck. And of course, I'll have a link in the description. And you can go onto tappedout.net, look up Shattered Empires, which is the name that I used on tappedout.net, and look for my Captain Sisay deck there. All right. Then we have Erebos, God of the Dead. For 3 and a black, you get a 5/7 legendary enchantment god with indestructible. As long as your devotion to black is less than 5, Erebos isn't a creature. And your opponents can't gain life and pay 1 and a black and 2 life to draw a card. Erebos is pretty much a good things black deck. Mono black is pretty straightforward. Then we had Zur the Enchanter. 1 white, blue, black for a 1/4 legendary human wizard with flying. And when Zur the Enchanter attacks, you may search your library for an enchantment card with converted mana cost 3 or less and put it onto the battlefield. If you do, shuffle your library. Now, what's nice is it's put it onto the battlefield, so it doesn't target, so it gets around things like Shroud and Hexproof. So usually there's 2 different ways you build it. Well, technically 3 because you could do a hybrid of the 2. Either you go Voltron and lots of enchantments that just buff Xur, and you try to just commander damage people to death, or you go Pillow Fort style with things like propaganda, ghostly prison, things to make it harder to attack you. And then, of course, you can go some kind of hybrid between the two, but those are usual styles that you're going to see. All right, and then we had Sachi, daughter of Seshiro, for 2 green green. You get a 1/3 legendary snake shaman. Other snakes you control are +1 or +0 +1, and then the shamans you control have tap, add 2 green to your mana pool. So it's really nice. It's just a standard green. Usually it's snake tribal. There's a couple other legendary green snakes that you could use as your commander, but I think this one's nice because it has a built-in ramp effect, and so it's got a lot of snakes and other shamans because all those shamans also tap for green green. All right, then we had Machias the Unhallowed, 3 black 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 for a 5/5 legendary zombie cleric with Intimidate, and when a human deals damage to you, destroy it. Other non-human creatures you control get +1/+1 and have Undying. So it's generally one of the better black reanimation commanders. You're going to be stacking your own things to it, reanimating them, sticking things in your graveyard to bring them back. Basically, black reanimator. All right, then we had Yidris Maelstrom Wielder. Blue, black, red, green for a 5/4 legendary ogre wizard with trample. And when Yidris deals combat damage to a player, as you cast spells, whenever Yidris deals combat damage to a player, as you cast spells from your hand this turn, they gain Cascade. And Cascade says when you cast this spell, reveal cards from the top of your library and to reveal a spell with 1 less converted mana cost, and you may cast it for free. Put the revealed cards on the bottom of your library. What's fun is the Cascade stack. So if you can do multiple combat steps or double strike, then you can give it multiple copies of Cascade. So generally what you'll see is a lot of ramp and big cost and cast spells out of the deck. A lot of draw, things like that. I've seen it done Infect, which I don't recommend because I hate Infect, but that's a personal preference. All right, then we had Kemba Ka Regent, which is 1 white white for a 2/4 legendary cat cleric. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a 2/2 white cat creature token onto the battlefield for each equipment attached to Kemba Ka Regent. Pretty straightforward, cat tribal, lots of equipment. Throw them on Kemba, get out lots of tokens, try and swarm people down. All right, then we have Gerard Capation, 3 white white for a 3/4 legendary human soldier. At the beginning of your upkeep, you gain 1 life for each card in target opponent's hand. 3 and a white, tap target creature, activate this ability only if Gerard Capation is attacking. I'm actually not sure what you would build with this other than, a little bit of group hug with things like Howling Mind, Font of Mythos, having everybody draw extra cards, Temple Bell, and then a life gain deck maybe. I wasn't sure what this player was building, but no, again, next week I'm going to ask everybody what their decks are like, just to get a kind of an idea for these so that you all listening and watching can figure out what they're doing. All right, so let's go ahead and go on to game number 1. These are the pairings. Let me know what you think should have won or could have won each of these pairings in the comments. Um, and then after each game, I'll tell you who won each of the pods. All right, so pod number 1 was Kali of the Vast, Prosh Skyray of Kerr, Gisela Blade of Gold Knight. Then pod number 2 was Thraxamundar, the Scarab God, and Hapatra. Pod 3 was my pod with Captain Sisay, Erebos, and Xur the Enchanter. Pod 4 was Sachi, Machias, and the Scarab God. Pod 5 was Yidris, Alicia, and the Scarab God. And Pod 6 was Malimo, Kemba, and Gerard Capation. So like I said, go ahead and guess who you think won each pod, and then at the end, you'll find out if you were right or not. All right, so let's go ahead and get into game number 1. So, as I said, it was Captain Siste, Erebos, Xur the Enchanter. The turn order entered up with Erebos going first, then Captain Siste, and then Xur the Enchanter. So, turn 1 was pretty boring for the most part. The Erebos player played Swamp, got a Soul Ring. I played a Forest. Xur played a Demur Guildgate. Not much else happened. Turn 2, our lovely Erebos player went ahead and used his Soul Ring in a Swamp to Demonic Tutor. Demonic Tutor is 1 and a black for a sorcery that says search your library for any card, put it in your hand, and shuffle your library. He went ahead and grabbed Urborg, Tomb of the Yawgmoth, which is a legendary land that says each land is a swamp in addition to its other types. This is really good for black decks because things like Cabal Coffers is pay 2 tap, add 1 black mana for each swamp you control. So this turns all your lands, including the Cabal Coffers, into swamps. So you get a lot more value out of it. Then I played a plane, so still nothing much for me. Then the Xur player, of course, got a Soul Ring, played another tap land, played a Pearl Medallion. So Pearl Medallion says is an artifact for 2. It says white spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So everybody's ramping except for me. Fun times. All right. Then our Erebos player on turn 3 played Dark Depths. Dark Depths is a legendary snowland that enters the battlefield with 10 ice counters on it, and then for 3 mana you can remove an ice counter from it, and then if there are no ice counters on it, you sacrifice it and get a token copy of a 2020 black avatar creature token with flying and indestructible named Marit Lage. Thing is ridiculous. All right, so then he plays Liliana Vest, which is a planeswalker for 3 black black. It's 5 loyalty. The +1 ability is target player discards a card. -2 is search your library for a card, shuffle your library, then put that card on top. And then -8 is reanimate all creatures from all graveyards. I hardly ever see the -8, but the -2, the Vampiric Tutor, happens all the time. It's generally what people use it for, unless they have a discard build. But generally, it's just used to ramp or tutor twice. I finally got to my third land. Well, it's turn 3, so I got my Selvala Explorer returned. It is 1 green white for a 2/4 legendary elf scout that has parlay. So you tap it. Each player reveals the top card of his or her library. Then for each non-land card revealed this way, add green to your mana pool and you gain 1 life. Then each player draws a card. So it's a ramp spell because it gives you a little bit of green mana, hopefully, and everybody draws a card. So it gets you in a little bit better position. And then the Xur player played Xur. So Xur the Enchanter, you already heard. All right, so now we start doing things. We are now moving on to turn 4, where the Erebos player plays Mirage Mirror. This is new from the Hour of Devastation set that came out last month, and it costs 3 for an artifact that says pay 2. Mirage Mirror becomes a copy of target artifact, creature, enchantment, or land until end of turn. Now, what's nice is that you can use it to copy Dark Depths. That then makes it a Dark Depths with 0 counters on it. Now, they're legendary, so you needed to pick 1 to sacrifice, so usually you sacrifice the original because Mirage Mirror then has 0 counters on it and immediately becomes the Marit Lage. So you get that 2020 flying indestructible token. So I'm, of course, panicking on that. I tapped myself Vala. Everyone reveals the cards. I get 2 extra green mana. I'm able to play Thran Dynamo. Thran Dynamo is an artifact for 4 mana that taps for 3 mana. And then I was able to play my commander, Captain Sisse. Then we moved on to the Xur player who played Grim Guardian, which is 2 and a black for a 1/4 enchantment creature zombie, which says whenever it or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses a life. He then played Imprisoned in the Moon, which is 2 and a blue for an enchantment aura, enchanted creature land. It can enchant a creature, land, or planeswalker, and the enchanted permanent is a colorless land with tap, add wastes to your mana pool, and loses all other card types and abilities. So he stopped the Marit Lage, thankfully, and turned it into a token. We went too far. Okay. For those watching or listening, I accidentally skipped pages on my video. All right, so stopped the Marit Lage token, awesome, and then he attacked with Xur and got Diplomatic Immunity, which is what I always recommend as the first card for Xur. So Diplomatic Immunity is 1 in a blue for an enchant creature aura that says enchanted creature can't be the target of spells or abilities, and Diplomatic Immunity can't be the target of spells or abilities. So it has Shroud and the creature has Shroud. That's really nice for Xur because, as I said, his ability doesn't target, it puts him into play. So he can still enchant himself and gets around this, but it gives him nice survivability against targeted removal. Doesn't stop global removal, but it definitely stops targeted removal. All right, so we moved on to turn 5. And of course, the Erebos player just completely wrecks me with Barter and Blood, which is 2 black black for a sorcery that says each player sacrifices 2 creatures. Guess how many I had? 2. So I lost that. Xur was gone. Erebos wasn't even in play. The token was already turned into a land, so it didn't die. So it was pretty one-sided for the Erebos player. He's doing really good this game. All right, so I play the other Selvala, Heart of the Wilds, which is 1 green for a 2/3 legendary elf scout, of course. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, its controller may draw a card if its power is greater than each other creature's power. I hardly ever pay attention to that ability. It's more the second ability, which is pay 1 green, tap, add X mana to your in any combination of colors to your mana pool, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. Now, right now, it's the only creature I control, so it's pay 1 green to get 2 mana, which is not bad. It's still a ramp. And then I played Gift of Immortality, which is 2 and a white for an enchantment aura enchant creature. When enchanted creature dies, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. Then return Gift of Immortality to the battlefield attached to that creature at the beginning of the next end step. Basically, it forces someone to kill things twice in order to keep it off the field. Our Zur player replayed Zur, and that finished to turn 5. All right, so we moved on to turn 6. The Erebos player actually used the +1 ability on Liliana, forced me to discard. So I went ahead and discarded Palicronis, World Eater, which is 2 and 2 green for a 5/5 legendary Hydra with monstrosity double X and a green. And then when Palicronis becomes monstrous, it deals X damage, divided as you choose among any number of target creatures your opponents control. And then each of those creatures deals damage equal to their power to Palicronis. Usually I use it as targeted removal to get rid of some burst things, or I give it Death Touch and swing with it and then kill everything. But in this case, it was just pitched to Liliana. And then he used Knight's Whisper, which is 1 and a black for a sorcery that says you draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. He then played Phyrexian Arena for 1 and 2 black, which is an enchantment that says at the beginning of your upkeep you draw a card and lose life. He then cast his commander Erebos. Alright, then it finally gets to my turn. I had enough mana with the Selvala that I was able to cast Avacyn, Angel of Hope, which is 5 white for an 8/8 legendary angel with flying, vigilance, indestructible, and your other permanents you control have indestructible. It's really nice for boards. Unfortunately, I didn't get to keep it long because the Xur player then played Darksteel Mutation onto my poor Avacyn, which is 1 and a white for an enchantment aura enchant creature that says enchanted creature is an insect artifact creature with base power and toughness 0/1 and has indestructible and loses all other abilities. So it's still indestructible, but none of my other stuff is indestructible, and it's a 0/1 that does nothing. That was a pretty good response. So he's been doing a lot of control. He stopped the Merit Lage, 20/20 indestructible, stopped my 8/8 indestructible. A lot of control in that guy's player. And then he played Efar's Enlightenment with Xur's ability for 1 a white and a blue. So it's an enchantment aura enchant creature. When Efar's Enlightenment enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on enchanted creature. An enchanted creature has flying, and whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may return Efar's Enlightenment to its owner's hand. Yeah, that generally never happens. It was mostly for the flying and the +1/+1. All right, so we finished that turn. That was turn 6. Move on to turn 7. Black player gets to play Solemn Simulacrum, which is a 4-costing artifact creature golem 2/2 that when it enters the battlefield, you search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle your library, and then when it dies, you draw a card. You then cast Rune Scar Demon for 5 and black for a 6/6 demon with flying, and when it enters the battlefield, search your library for a card, put it in your hand, and then shuffle your library. Cut to my turn. I played Dragon Lord Dromaka for 4 a green and a white for a 5/7 legendary Elder Dragon that says it can't be countered. It has flying and lifelink, and opponents can't cast spells during my turn. I then dropped a Vidalcan Orrery, which is a 4 casting cost artifact that says you may cast non-land cards though they have flash. So it gives all of my cards flash, which is nice. Then our Xur player played Agent of Erebos, 3 and a black for a 2/2 enchantment creature zombie that when it or another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, exile all cards from target player's graveyard. So he hit the Erebos player the first time. Then he played Ethereal Armor, which is 1 white for an enchantment or enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control and has first strike. Really powerful in something like Xur because Yeah, you play a ton of enchantments, so it just buffs. And then, of course, he took the opportunity to exile my graveyard. And that was turn 8. He also played Coco Show at some point at that turn. I'm not exactly sure if it was that turn or this turn, which is turn 8. He played a ton of stuff on turn 8. Oh no, it was definitely turn 8 because he damnations. Okay, so he plays Gauntlet of Power, which is 5 mana for an artifact that says when it comes into play, choose a color. Creatures of the chosen color get +1/+1, and never a basic land is tapped for mana of the chosen color. Its controller adds 1 mana of that color to his or her pool, so all of his swamps tap for an additional black. Then he played Cage Sun, which is a 6 mana cost version of the same thing, but it's limited to your stuff. So now all of his swamps tap for 3. It also isn't limited to basic lands. Any of your lands that tap for black would get an additional black. It then plays Damnation for 2 black sorcery, destroy all creatures, they can't be regenerated. So it kills my poor Selvala. Now, Selvala immediately came back because of the Gift of Immortality, but then he does Hero's Downfall, which is 1 black for an instant, destroy target creature or planeswalker. So now Selvala is completely gone. He then responds with Kokosho, the Evening Star. 4 black for a 5/5 legendary dragon spirit with flying, and when Kokosho dies, each opponent loses 5 life, and you gain life equal to life lost this way. He also still has Erebos in play because it's indestructible. I didn't get to do anything. I drew and held on to cards. And then our Zerg player played Collective Restraint, which is 3 and a blue for an enchantment that says creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays X for each creature attacking you, where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. He had 3 land types, the blue, so island, plains, and swamp at this point, so it was an additional 3 to attack Zerg. Not that I was doing anything, I had no creatures left. No, correction, I still had a 0/1 indestructible insect. It was just sitting there. Alright, so I still have my Vidalcan Orrery, so all my spells still have flash. So we move on to turn 9, where the Erebos player casts Animate Dead, targeting the Runescar Demon. Animate Dead is 1 and a black for an enchantment aura that enchants a creature in a graveyard. When Animate Dead enters the battlefield, if it's on the battlefield, it loses Enchant Creature card in a graveyard and gains Enchant Creature on the battlefield with Animate Dead. Return the enchanted creature to the battlefield under your control and attach Animate Dead to it. When Animate Dead leaves the battlefield, that creature's controller sacrifices, and the enchanted creature is -1/-0. So basically, you pick a creature in a graveyard, you reanimate it and get it. So Runescar Demon let him go ahead and get a card. He then played his own Vidalcan Orrery. And then, so what I did was at the end of his turn, I flashed in Elvish Piper and Sigarda Heron of Hosts. Now, Sigarda Heron of Hosts is 2 green, white for a 5/5 legendary angel with flying and hexproof, and spells and abilities your opponent's control can't cause you to sacrifice permanents. And Elvish Piper is really fun, newer addition to the deck. It's 3 and a green for a creature, a 1/1 creature elf shaman that you can pay 1 green and tap to put a creature card from your hand on the battlefield. The Elvish Piper was immediately then slaughtered by the Erebos player. Slaughter is 2 black for an instant with buyback, pay 4 life that destroy target non-black creature. That creature cannot be regenerated this turn. Pretty brutal. And then I used, excuse me, woo. I used the last of my mana to play Void Winnower. Void Winnower costs 9 for a creature Eldrazi that says your opponents can cast spells with even converted mana costs. And your opponents can't block with creatures with even converted mana costs. What's nice is 0 is even, so tokens have 0, and they can't block with tokens either. Zerg then played Thassa, God of the Sea. For 2 and a blue, you get a 5/5 legendary creature, legendary enchantment creature god with indestructible. It's not a creature if your devotion is less than 5 in blue, and at the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1, and then pay 1 a blue. Target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. Lots of power there. Lots of stuff happened. Unfortunately, oh, I forgot to make a picture of this. So at the end of the turn, Erebos played Ingaruk's Wake. Ingaruk's Wake is 7 and 2 black for a sorcery that says destroy all creatures you don't control. I somehow forgot to put it on my pictures. I'm sorry about that for those watching. But yeah, that completely clears the board except for Thassa, but Thassa's not a god, so it can't block. So he then swings for lethal at me the next turn, and then he casts Torment of Hailfire, which is X black black. Sorcery, repeat the following process X times. Each opponent loses 3 life unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent and discards a card. He just put a ton of mana into it. He counted the amount of permanents Zur has. Said, all right, even if you sack everything and discard every card in your hand, you're still going to lose enough life for lethal. And so Erebos won that match, which was sad for me. I dislike losing, but as I keep telling people with my Sisay deck, as good as it is, if you keep Sisay off the board, it's not going to do a whole lot. Which is pretty much true of a lot of my decks. A lot of my decks are built around the commander. All right, so do you remember the pairings earlier? Do you remember who you voted for? All right, so for each pod, the winners are Pod 1, Micaeus. No, I have these pods in different order, do I? Don't I? No, yeah. So Pod 1, Micaeus 1, then. Oh no, I'm looking at the wrong game board. Oh, I apologize. All right, so yeah, okay. Pod 1, Gisela. Pod 2, the Scarab God. Pod 3, Erebos. Pod 4, Micaeus. Pod 5, the Scarab God. And Pod 6, Malimo. So, hope you guys got those right. Let's go ahead and move on to game 2. We have our new pairings up. We had Malimo versus the Scarab God versus Micaeus. In Pod 2 was Erebos, Hapatra, and Gisela. Pod 3 was Prosh, Gerard, and the Scarab God. Pod 4 was Yidris, Sisay, and the Scarab God. Pod 5 is Thrax, Mondar, Alicia, and Kemba. And Pod 6 was Kalia, Zur, and Sachi. So go ahead and think about who you think would win each of those pairings and keep it in mind for at the end of the game. All right, so let's go ahead and move into one. This was one of the ones that started off really well for me. I played a Savannah. I got to head and go first for Captain Sisay, then the Scarab God, and then Yidris. So turn 1, I played Savannah, which is one of the original dual lands that it counts as both the plains and the forest, so it can tap for either white or green. I then use it to play Sol Ring. The black, the Scarab God player then played Crypt Breaker, which is 1 black for a 1/1 zombie that says pay 1 a black and discard a card and tap to put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. Then you can tap 3 untapped zombies you control to draw a card and lose a life. It's pretty nifty. And then Yidris played a Birds of Paradise, which is 1 green for a 0/1 creature bird with flying and tap to add 1 mana of any color. So it's mostly uses of mana ramp, mana fix, things like that. All right, so turn 2, played another land, played Captain Sisay. Uh, our lovely Scarab God did not get to play anything, and then Yidris played a Sword of Feast and Famine, which is 3 for an artifact equipment that gives the equipped creature +2/+2 and protection from black and green. And whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card and you untap all your lands. Really good, but it's sitting on a bird, so he really just wanted to keep it there as a blocker. All right, so then we move on to turn 3. I drop an Elvish Piper for our Scarab God player dropped a Cemetery Reaper, which is 1 black black for a 2/2 zombie that says other zombies you control are +1/+1. And pay 3 a black and tap, exile target creature from a graveyard, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. Now, with the Scarab God only costing 1 more than that to get a 4/4 version, you probably won't use that secondary ability unless you're really hurting or can't get your God into play. But mostly it's the secondary buff, plus it counts as a zombie. So really good card if you're building the Scarab God. Then you just played Rashmi Eternity's Crafter for 2, a green and a blue. You get a 2/3 Legendary Elf Druid, which says whenever you cast your first spell each turn, reveal the top card of your library. If it is a non-land card with converted mana cost less than that spell's, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. Then if you don't cast the revealed card, put it in your hand. So if it's a land, it just goes in your hand. If you choose not to cast it, it goes in your hand. So really nice for ramping and things like that, getting more cards in hand or anything else. Alright, so at the end of the turn, I used Captain Sisse to search for Elish Norn Grand Cenobite, which is 5 white white for a 4/7 legendary Praetor with Vigilance. Other creatures you control get +2/+2, and creatures your opponents control get -2/-2. So on my turn, this is now turn 4, I go ahead and use the Elvish Piper to drop in the Elish Norn, kills all the zombies, drops the bird to a 0/1. It's still pro black and green, so it's still viable. Then played Solemn Simulacrum to go get another land. I then used Captain Sisse to get Gaia's Cradle. Gaia's Cradle is a legendary land that taps for a green for each creature you control. And then that gives me lots of mana. And then I was really amused by this next part because, as I keep saying, eliminate Captain Sisse, it makes the game a lot harder for me. However, the only removal that the Scarab God had was Fatal Push. Fatal Push is 1 black for an instant that destroys target creature if it has converted mana cost 2 or less. Sisse has 4. However, Fatal Push has Revolt, which says destroy that creature if its converted mana cost is 4 or less if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn. So what he did was he cast Severed Legion, which is 1 black for a 2/2 creature zombie with Fear. Because it's a 2/2, Elish Norn kills it. So it comes into play and dies, therefore leaving play, triggering the Revolt for Fatal Push. Then he could use the Fatal Push to destroy Captain Sisse. So really nice um, buy play there. Although there's better plays, it was just cool to see people use the stuff that's already on the table. And then, of course, in response, I flashed in Yeva, Nature's Herald, which is 2 green for a 4/4 legendary elf shaman with flash, and you may cast green creatures as though they had flash. All right, and so, Rashmi. Rashmi's still alive because she was a 2/3. All right, so we moved on to turn 5. Sorry, I played Birds of Paradise. I then played Swiftfoot Boots. Swiftfoot Boots is 2 for a artifact equipment that says equipped creature has hexproof and haste, and then it equips for 1. I then recast Captain Sisse, equipped the boots, searched my deck for Avacyn, and then dropped Avacyn in with my Elvish Piper. And then our Scarab God then played Liliana's Mastery, which is 3 black for an enchantment that says your zombies are +1/+1, and when it enters the battlefield, you get 2/2 black zombies. Now, because he had them +1/+1, those zombies survived, so he had 2 1/1 zombies at this point. Unfortunately, I had a whole lot more stuff. So when we moved to the next turn, I then played Paradox, and I went and searched for Paradox Engine. Now, Paradox Engine is 5 mana for a legendary artifact, so it's searchable by Sisse, and whenever you cast a spell, untap all non-land permanents you control. So every time I cast a spell, I can untap Captain Sisse, go get another legendary card, cast that, untap Captain Sisse, and repeat as necessary until I had whatever I needed. I had a spell in hand. I don't remember what it was. I played it, untapped Captain Sisse. I went and searched for Zavala, Heart of the Wilds. As you remember, it's one green and tap to get X mana in any combination of colors to your mana pool, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. And at this point, between Elish Norn and Avacyn, I have a 10 creature, so I can pay 1 green to get 10 mana. So as long as I'm casting something that costs less than 9, I net a mana every time, so then I can cast those more expensive ones later on, like the Ulamog or the other Ulamog in my deck. So basically, I just went and got every legendary non-land permanent in my deck, which includes Akram's Mora, which gives them all haste. Cast them. My board's huge. I have a bazillion mana. I can then overrun, give them all +3/+3 multiple times, and kill the entire board. So that was game number 2. All right, do you remember the pairings? Do you remember who you think won? All right. So pod 1, Mikaeus won. Pod 2, Erebos won. Pod 3, Prosh won. Pod 4 was my pod, and I won that with Captain Sisse. Pod 5 was Alicia. And Pod 6 was Zur the Enchanter. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our last game and get those pairings. Pairings were Captain Sisse, Prosh, and Zur. Pod 2 is Scarab God, and Kemba almost had all 3 Scarab Gods. I was really hoping for a full Scarab God pod, but unfortunately it never happened. I think they should just do that at the beginning because that'd just be funny. Pod 3 was Gerard, Hapatra, and Sachi. Pod 4 is the Scarab God, Yidris and Kalia. Pod 5 is Erebos, Macias, and Alicia. And Pod 6 is Thraxamundar, Malimo, and Gisela. All right, so let's move on. So turn 1 was fairly boring for most of us. It was land, and then the Zer player dropped a Chrome Mox. Now, Chrome Mox is a 0 casting cost artifact with imprint. When Chrome Mox enters the battlefield, you remove a non-artifact, non-land card in your hand from the game, imprinted underneath. Usually, people put it underneath the Chrome Mox to let them know what it is, and then it taps for a mana of any color of the imprinted card to your mana pool. So in this case, he did Underworld Coinsmith, which is both black and white for a 2/2 enchantment creature, human cleric. Whenever it or another enchantment is the battlefield under your control, you gain a life. And then you can pay a black and white and a life to have each opponent lose a life. So in this case, Chrome Mox would tap for white or black. Um, Turn 2 is pretty boring. We all played lands. Not much else happened. Turn 3, I got to my third land, so I was able to play Runetail Kitsune Ascendant, which is 2 and a white for a legendary creature, Fox Monk. Whenever you have 30 or more life, flip Runetail Kitsune Ascendant. And then it turns into a Runetail's Essence, which is a legendary enchantment that says prevent all damage that would be dealt to creatures you control. So this is Commander. You start at 40 life. So the turn I play it, I was still at 40 life, so I was able to immediately flip it, and now my creatures no longer take damage. And then our Prosh player played Gifted Aetherborn, which is black for a 2/3 creature Aetherborn vampire with Death Touch and Lifelink. And then Zer played an Orzhov Signet, which is 2 mana for an artifact that is pay 1, tap, add white, black to your mana pool. All right, turn 4, I drop out Captain Sisse. The Prosh played Thunderbreak Regent, which is 2 red for a 4/4 creature dragon with flying. And whenever a dragon you control becomes a target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, Thunderbreak Regent deals 3 damage to that player. Then, of course, Zer played Zer. All right, so moving on to turn 5, I used Captain Sisse to go get my Guy's Cradle again. And then I already had Sigarda Heron's Grace in hand, so I went ahead and cast Sigarda's Heron's Grace, which is 3 green-white for a 4/5 legendary angel with flying, and you and humans you control have hexproof. And then it's an ability that I never use, which is pay 2, exile a card from your graveyard, put a 1/1 white human soldier creature token onto the battlefield. It's mostly, in my opinion, it might as well be flavor text, because I never use that ability. Prosh then used Prey Upon, which is 1 green for a sorcery that says target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. There'd be no point in using him on mine because mine are all take 0 damage. But it's fun because his Gifted Aetherborn has Death Touch and Life Sync, so he used it to kill Zer before Zer can get the Diplomatic Immunity on it. He gained his 2 life. Zer's response was to play Necropotence, which is black for an enchantment that says skip your draw step. Whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard, and you can pay 1 life to exile the top card of your library face down. Put that card into your hand at the beginning of your next end step. Basically, a lot of people, it's because you have so much life in Commander, it's really easy to use because you can just pay 1 life and draw a ton of cards. Now, you're drawing them at the end of your turn, so you can't really use them on your turn, and so you need to make sure that you're not drawing too many and discarding and things like that, but it's got a lot of potential strength in Commander. All right, so then we move on to... Did I miss something? Oh, he also played Feral Animus, which I forgot to put on here, which is a red and a green for a 2/1 creature that says pay 1 red and a green to double the power of the Feral Animist. I don't know why I didn't put the picture on there. Sorry for those watching. All right, so let's go ahead and move to turn 6. I went ahead and used Sisse to go get Karametra, God of the Harvest, which is 3 a green and a white for a 6/7 legendary enchantment creature god with indestructible. You need devotion 7 between white and green to turn it into a creature. But what's cool is whenever you cast a creature spell, you may search your library for a forest or plains, put it on the battlefield tapped and shuffle your library. I then played the Selvala Heart of the Wilds. That's the green one that taps for mana depending on the creatures I control. Our lovely Prosh player played Sire of Insanity, which is 4 black and a red for a 6/4 creature demon. At the beginning of each end step, each player discards his or her hand. It's brutal. I'm not sure what he was comboing it with. Normally, you combo it with things that require you to have no hand size, which I am completely spacing on what the ability is called. But I know that there's some creatures that rely on you not having hand size. It's really annoying to other people, though. Zur then played Solemnity, which is new out of Hour of Devastation. For 2 and a white, you get an enchantment that says players can't get counters, and counters can't be put on artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or lands. This is actually one of the few decks I use that don't put counters on anything. So it didn't affect me at all. I have no idea how it would affect a Prosh player. It's really good against things like Marin and any of the other experienced gods and Atraxa, Super Friends, things like that. And then he played Umbra Mystic, which is 2 and a white for a 2/2 creature human wizard that says auras attached to permanents you control have totem armor. Totem armor says if the enchanted permanent would die, you can sacrifice the totem armor instead to keep the thing alive. Unfortunately, that then led to turn 7 where I was able to do my Paradox engine again. Only this time I decided that instead of just getting the damage out and killing everyone, I was going to go ahead and deck everybody. Because everybody had already drawn more cards than me. So Vol the Explorer Return, the one that said tap, each player reveals a card, and then they draw a card, actually meant that everybody drew out before me. Plus, I was able to get Bow of Nylea, which one of the abilities is take cards from my graveyard and put them back in my library. So I was able to actually deck out and mill everybody in my green-white legend deck. So that ended me with 2-1. I took 4th place, which is unfortunate. I would have liked to have a better position, but it was still a lot of fun. All right, so for those who remembered the pods, Pod 1, that was my pod. Captain Sisay won. Pod 2 was one of the Scarab Gods. Pod 3 was Hapatra. Pod 4 was Yidris. Pod 5 was Erebos. And Pod 6 was Gisela. Let me know how you guys did guessing, if you were able to guess any of the pod winners. Hope you enjoyed my video. If you enjoy it, please leave a comment, subscribe, give the video a like. For those listening on iTunes or to the podcast, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you all next time.